Tear your tickets, take your seats, it's time for Popcorn. I'm Dylan from the Pop Culturist, and today we have a Popcorn spoiler special with our top 10. Well, it's not really a top 10, we've changed it up. I'm going to call it the best and worst, or most disappointing, movies of 2017. Now, you might ask why we're doing a best of 2017 at the end of January. And it's an interesting question. Hey, Jess, how's it going over there, Jesse Stevenson? So, might I say, the reason that we tend to save these things, amongst my friends, we always save it to Australia Day, which is today, so happy Australia Day, everyone. But we tend to wait till January because the problem with Australia is that all the Oscar buzz movies, or the Emmy buzz movies, or the Golden Globe buzz movies, always seem to come out at the end of the year in America. So you're looking at November and December, but in Australia, most of the movies that are announced for Best Picture, or Best Actor, or Best Actress are movies we've never even heard of, because they're not released in Australia until January, sometimes even February. So a lot of movies like I, Tonya only just came out on Thursday. The Phantom Thread with Daniel Day-Lewis, I don't even know if that's out yet. So it's hard to see all these movies and really make a judgment of 2017 when we haven't seen all the movies in 2017. Other disadvantage is of course, I can't see every single movie ever made in 2017. So I think I got up to 61 movies that I watched during 2017's releases, and again, fell into a bit of a hole where the movies from January of 2017 were still movies left over from December, November 2016. So movies like Moonlight, La La Land, Lion, all seem to fall in this hole that don't get included in lists, for myself at least. So, with that all being said, let's talk about the best and worst, or most disappointing movies, and how I judge them. Yeah, same number as many games as I played. Go us. Well done, Haggard MC. 61 games. That's impressive. Is that one game 61 times, like Rocket League, or is that 61 different games and finished end credits? Maybe. So, the way that I judge a movie, there's a lot of things that it can come down to. They can be purely entertaining, they can be thought-provoking, they can be thrilling, they might have great technical achievement. There's a whole lot of things that come into it. And most of these top movies or best of movies lists come down to the prestige kind of movies, like I'm saying, the Academy Award kind of movies. But mine are the ones that I enjoyed the most. And the problem in modern day movies is that, and it's kind of been discussed on the show before, is that it's this mentality of either it's the best movie ever or it's the worst movie ever. There is no in between. There is no, man, that was like an 80% out of 100 or 90% out of 100. It's either 100 out of 100 or it's minus 10. There is nothing in between. And I myself need to love a movie, like love it inside and out. Everything about it is perfect. The performances, the pacing, the direction, everything needs to be perfect for it to be a movie I love. So when it comes to making these lists at the end of the year, I don't always find that there's 10 movies that I absolutely love. So that's where I kind of fall into a hole. So that being said, the way I seem to judge it is that there are movies that I want to see more than once. So a movie I'll go and see, and I want to see it again. And I will go see it again. And one of the big ones is movies that I want to share with someone else. So I see a movie, and the experience of the movie is so good, or the message that it has is so good, that I want to share it as a gift to somebody else. So as soon as I've seen it, I'll race out, organize to get someone else to come and watch it with me, and just kind of watch them experience the movie at the same time while still getting a chance to see the movie a second time round. An exception to the rule, though, is there's a lot of movies this year that I feel like I might be giving a hard go, so I kind of watch it a second time to give it a chance to kind of prove itself in a way. So movies that are possibly bad or not necessarily good, or have been hyped up and I'm just not getting what they're about, perhaps, I give a second chance. So there's movies there that I see twice there as well. That being said, let's get into the best and start with the worst / most disappointing movies of 2017. So, there's no particular order to these except my best movie of the year, so I'll just kind of go through them as we go. So, there's no numbers. Let's just do it this way. So, what I've got is the most disappointing movie. So, I'll start with one that I was looking forward to. So, it's Alien Covenant. Oh yeah, and Haggard MC's also commented, "Oh, you don't know that this is Ryan, ahaha, I don't finish games." Oh, of course. Ahaha. So, very clever, Ryan, and yes, you don't finish games, that is also true. So, might I add, Alien Covenant was a big movie that I was looking forward to. Ridley Scott's return again to the Alien franchise. So, in 2012, Ridley Scott, director of the original Alien, came back. He was disappointed with the way that the Alien sequels went. Alien was an incredible movie. Aliens, even more incredible in my opinion. Alien 3, not so much. Alien Resurrection, not so much. The Alien vs. Predators, none at all. So he came back and made this movie Prometheus, which was like a existential study of what it means to be human and where we come from, and explored artificial intelligence, and that was represented in the character of David, played by Michael Fassbender. And they were all really heady ideas that were suited more to the Blade Runner world, which Ridley Scott also directed. So it was weird that he was exploring these things when, in the original Alien at least, Ash, played by Ian Holm, who was turned out to be an android, was really just kind of like a throwaway character. So Prometheus is written by Damon Lindelof, and he is one of the executive producers, creators, writers of Lost. So he built in all these mysteries and things that were set up and questions that never really got answered. So when they came to make Alien Covenant, it was going to be the sequel to Prometheus. And the problem is it didn't pay off on anything Prometheus-wise. Everything that they set up Prometheus, they said Prometheus is not going to be an Alien sequel, it's its own movie in that universe. Even though it's the same thing. A group of people land on a planet and shit goes down. So the things that were left over from Prometheus, exploring where we came from, the engineers who created us, what were their intentions, what's going on there. David and Shaw, the two main characters from Prometheus, had traveled on into outer space to go to the homeworld of these engineers to find out what happened. And then the movie starts, and it's Alien/Prometheus all over again. The Covenant is a ship full of people. They land on this planet. Shit goes down. There's xenomorphs. It's just Alien again. And all the things interesting about Prometheus were completely thrown out of the way. Literally, there's a flashback where they land on the planet, and everything Prometheus is built to is like David just like destroys everything, and then they move on and never talk about it again. The character of Shaw, who is built up and appeared in promo clips and like this lengthy extended scene that isn't even in the movie where she's actually in it, and Naomi Rapace comes back to play Shaw, and it's not in the movie. She's like dead, and that's it. The end. Of course, yes, there was some fast-on-fast action that Ryan wants to mention. when David kisses Walter. So Michael Fassbender, again exploring this idea, further exploring the idea of what this artificial intelligence is, and if we can create artificial intelligence, does that make us gods? There's a tiny bit in there with David, who returns from Prometheus, and a new character, again played by Michael Fassbender, Walter, who they're both these android that look the same as Michael Fassbender, and they play a flute together, and Ryan wanted to mention that because he likes their flute adventure. So anyway, yeah, I was very disappointed with Alien Covenant. It gets to a point, and then it just turns into alien movie, but not in a good sense. It's like the alien's trying to kill him, it's chasing him around, it's this CGI horrible looking non-interesting version of the alien. It's slightly different but pretty much exactly the same, and it just kind of turns into this uninteresting horror movie at the end. So yeah, that was one of my most disappointing movies. The next most disappointing movie is... And it's hard to say. Disappointing is the right word. Not worst, but The Last Jedi. There's a lot of great things about The Last Jedi. I did enjoy the opening battle was incredible. I liked the humor throughout the movie. There were a lot of interesting ideas about what the Jedi represent and what they don't represent anymore. There was a unique voice behind it. But the problem was the way that it just treated everything that's come before, especially in this reiteration of the Force Awakens. And yes, Ryan seems to forgotten that we went and saw Alien. We did a actual review, and we also did a spoilers review about that. So if you want to check that out, check out the previous videos. But yeah, that was my main gripe, is that it seemed, again, in the Damon Lindelof world, J.J. Abrams, who co-created Lost, and Alias, and all these shows and movies that really work on suspense and mystery, even the Mission Impossible movies or Super 8, have this sense of mystery to it and asking these questions. And then all the questions that were set up in The Force Awakens, Phasma, Snoke, Luke Skywalker, Kylo Ren, Rey's parents, Rey, all these things were just like, yeah, you know what, I don't like those. And I understand Rian Johnson coming in as a director and wanting to do that, and Lucasfilm supporting him in that. But then, what is their plan? Like, if there's no clear arc, then they're just making it up as they go, then what is even the point? It's really disappointing that they've done that. And I'm not one of these people who's like, I want to sign a petition to eradicate it from the history of the world. I like The Last Jedi, and I respect what it does, and I look forward to seeing where it's going to go from here, but it did cause a lot of disappointment and backlash for a lot of people. Hi, James. How are you? Ryan, can your son type? Anyway, number 3, I guess. We're going numbers now down on my most disappointing movies. And James feels that there is a possibility they do have a plan, we just don't know what it is yet. Possibly. I mean, I'd like to think there'd be a plan, and I can't fathom why they wouldn't have some kind of plan, but from everything that the interviews have said, and what Rian Johnson said, and Mark Hamill said, it does seem like they've kind of just winging it as they go. And not even like an overall arcing story, it just seems to be, we'll see what sticks. But I hope there is something, and I hope when the next installment, episode 9, comes out, everybody will be turned around and it'll all make sense, and people can shut up. But I think they've put themselves in a hole, and it's going to be hard to get out. But next on my most disappointing movies of 2017 is Logan. Now, a lot of people love this movie, and a lot of people are putting it in their favorite movies of the year. And that's not to say that there's not a lot of great things about it. It's Hugh Jackman, probably close to better than ever in the role of Wolverine that he's nurtured for 17 years, since X-Men in 2000. And it's his final swan song, and it's about him coming to terms with morality, being such an impossible to kill character, an immortal character like Wolverine. But the way that it's presented, the idea of Wolverine being sick because his adamantium is slowly killing him over this time, and what the world's become, and finding out that he has this semi-daughter, and what that means to him, that's all great. I love that. That is awesome. But that could have been put onto any story, and it still, I feel, would have been equally as good. The bare bones plot of the government are coming to get Wolverine again, and there's these agents who are faceless military people attacking him, and if you just look at the plot, Logan becomes a limo driver and drives around Vegas in a limo, or New Mexico in a limo, and keeps Professor X locked in his water tower. What is that? Why did he become a limo driver? That is dumb. Why didn't you do anything else than that? So there's just the simple structure of the movie is what's disappointing, and even the action scenes are very repetitive of what's done in the past. He's wearing the singlet, he's out in the woods, he's slicing up people. All the heartfelt things are awesome, but everything else seems to be lazy, and I think it could have been an incredible movie, but it's just a really good movie, and that's disappointing to me. I think it could have been better, and so that's why Logan's in there. Another movie that I've put in here is Justice League. Mostly because the way that the DC universe in cinema has gone, it's been a bumpy road, everyone will admit that. But the idea that this is the first time the Justice League has ever been put onto the screen, which is surprising considering it's been around for decades, and yet it didn't do the characters justice. It was an alright movie. You know, it's not horrible, but when you look at something like The Avengers, and The Avengers has always been kind of like the no-name brand to the brand name Justice League. It's kind of been lesser than. There's some good characters. Spider-Man, of course, is like an A-tier character, but all the rest, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, have always been lower C-tier characters, in the comics at least. And then bringing them together in The Avengers brings them up to a B level, but the Justice League has always been some AAA kind of level of, characters like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and seeing them come together finally was all right. There were some laughs in there. The sad thing is that it won't stand the test of time. You can watch Superman the movie with Christopher Reeve, and it still holds up now. And yes, it's a bit hokey, but the story's there, the performances are there, and forever in cinema are we going to still have Henry Cavill's funky mustache going on. They couldn't have compromised to remove that. It's sad to see that it won't stand the test of time, not only for that reason, but many other things in there as well. Oh, look, we've got a guest.
You're frozen.
Oh, I am frozen.
Hi, everyone. You can't see me.
And now maybe if I just do it like this from now on, and if I move here, you can't see my mouth. So that's why Justice League was really a disappointment for me. Oh, thank you. And also, and it hurts me to say, something that I was looking forward to a lot was Pitch Perfect 3. Now, I'm a massive Pitch Perfect fan. I love Pitch Perfect 1. It is so fun and funny and bright and colorful, and it's got great pop music and great songs and quirky characters, and everybody has this weird quirk to them that plays out in different ways across the movie and is referenced multiple times. Anna Kendrick is this little pixie. It was a massive breakout performance for Rebel Wilson as Fat Amy. And Ryan's just more technical difficulties. Let me just freeze for a second again. Maybe. Yes. No. Oh, no. He's disappointed in Pitch Perfect 3, I imagine. So, Pitch Perfect 1, I love. Everything about it. The Bellas, the Troublemakers, the riff-offs. It's just so good. The references to movies, Breakfast Club, I just loved. Pitch Perfect 2 was also good. It took the a cappella from high school or university into the global sphere, and they went to overseas to perform, and took the competition there, so it had somewhere to go. They brought in Haley Steinfeld's Emily character as well to kind of put some youth in there to make the older Bellas jealous. Had Dust Sound Machine, which were really fun. I had a second riff off. David Cross was hilarious in it as well. While not as good as the original Pitch Perfect, which is pretty well perfect. You can watch it from beginning to end multiple times and it's just a joy. Second one has some iffy bits, but it's still like well up there. So I was looking forward to Pitch Perfect 3. I didn't think it would be incredible, but I thought it might be on like a Pitch Perfect 2 tier. And Pitch Perfect 3 is half a movie. Half of the movie's idea is good, the other half is horrible. So the Pitch Perfect 3 is about the Bellas living their lives outside of university. They've got mundane jobs, entry-level jobs that they're not enjoying. So they come back together to go overseas and perform for the army. And that's a clever idea. It's the way to get them together again, give them something to do, put them in a new arena. And that is the half of the movie that works. There's still all the great connection between the characters, the banter between everybody. Oh, Ryan's asking, did my watching experience affect your final thoughts on the movie? Well, what he means there is, when I originally saw Pitch Perfect 3, it was an advanced screening, and it was the last day of 2017's work year, and I was held up at work with a customer that dragged out way too long, longer than it needed to be, and unfortunately I was late to the screening. So by the time I got to the screening, it was packed and there was no seats left, if any, maybe one up the back, but I didn't have the time to be the fat guy walking around in front of the screen for 10 minutes trying to find a seat and sit next to some stranger. So I just stood down near the stairs and kind of knelt or stood or leaned in the stairwell, fire hazard, for the movie. And we missed what I thought to be about, 5 minutes of the movie. It started with a dance, singing, opening number, so I figured that was the start of the movie. And I don't think it affected my experience of the movie, because I did go back and see it a second time, again, to give these things a chance. And on the second viewing, I realized I missed about 20 minutes of the start of the movie, which is quite a chunk. And the second half of the movie, which is the part that doesn't work for me, is where Rebel Wilson as Fat Amy is a character that's beloved. And in small doses, she's great in 1 and 2. In this one, they introduce her father, which is played by John Lithgow, who I love. Third Rock from the Sun and Cliffhanger and Planet of the Apes. He's incredible. But in this movie, he plays Fat Amy's father, and he's trying to get the inheritance of Fat Amy, so he kidnaps the Bellas and holds them ransom on a boat. And towards the end of the movie, Fat Amy infiltrates the boat, dressed in like, balaclava, black clothes, cat burglar style, and goes in and takes out all these people with karate moves and blows up the ship, and all this crazy Pitch Perfect was always a heightened reality, but only slight. This is just like ridiculous, stupid, Kevin James movie level, Rob Schneider level movie dumb. And so that part of it ruined it, and especially because the first time I went into it, I didn't expect that. And then it kind of went on this tangent, and I'm like, where did this come from? Whereas watching it the second time, the whole opening sequence is that with a big explosion and the title cards coming up, and then it leads up to that again, and you see it from a different perspective. But that was just an incredible waste. And having Gail and John come back, the announcers from Pitch Perfect 1 and 2, who are politically incorrect and hilarious. They're filming a documentary in this one, but it's in black and white, and they're shaky cam, and at no stage did I think that they were ever really filming a documentary that could be used. They're there for no reason. They're only funny in the last scene when they're back to commentating again. It was disappointing. The music was great. There was another riff off. Ruby Rose appears in it as well. But it was just disappointing. And I think the reviews reflect that as well, because it's very poorly rated at the moment. So that's my most disappointing movies of 2017. But let's get into the movies that I did like. So this is a cross between honorable mentions and movies that are in my best of. So we'll start with some honorable mentions. Ones that I really liked were... Let's have a look. I'll start with Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok was something very different. A lot of people complain that the Marvel movies are the same thing. They're a cookie cutter formula, and it's a superhero movie, and they do the same thing every time, which I I completely disagree with. I think every movie really tries to do something different. I mean, the whole Incredible Hulk is a monster movie. Iron Man is this kind of James Bond-esque gadget movie. You've got Captain America, which is a war movie, the first Avenger. You've got The Winter Soldier, which is a spy thriller. You've got Ant-Man, which is a heist movie. There's a whole lot of different styles to it. And they also bring in different directors each time for most cases. So you've got like James Gunn for the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, who brings this unique sense of humor to it and this amazing visual style. You've got Joe Johnston, who did the first Avenger, who also did The Rocketeer, and has this kind of period piece action adventure style. So they really do try and do something different each time. And Thor Ragnarok is definitely an example of that. That they've gotten to this would be their 17th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that they decided to change it up. They got Taika Waititi, who's a New Zealand director, in to add some comedy to it, and it's a bold risk. They really made a flat-out comedy. There's been a lot of humor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and probably Guardians of the Galaxy is the closest to a comedy, but this movie was flat-out comedy, beginning to end. And did I get the feeling that Thor Ragnarok Hindi? No, James, I did not get that feeling, but hijack Guardians art style, yes, very much. Yeah, when I saw the trailers, I very much got that Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, especially in the visual style and the bright colors and everything like that, like Yondu's blue, Nebula's blue, Gamora's green. All those bright kind of colors came into Thor Ragnarok, and I thought that was cool because I thought it was getting to the parts of the universe where Guardians of the Galaxy is, and would sync up with that area of the cosmos to meet up with the Guardians of the Galaxy or link up with Thanos' rule, which it didn't, and it did at the same time, or it will, but it doesn't feel like, it didn't feel in the movie that it was an aesthetic choice that seemed to match it. It just seemed like the choice that they were going for, which I liked. But the disappointing thing about that was, yes, Ryan, that is how Thor is getting into Infinity War by way of the Guardians. Yeah, but it only really plays out in the last couple of minutes, if any. It's teased. But the thing I really liked about it was that it was so fresh and different. The thing that I had a trouble with is that everything, the style and the tone was in the trailers. The Daryl and Thor shorts, the early trailers, the Hulk bursting out and he's a friend from work style of comedy, that was all not necessarily ruined in the trailers, but it was such a shift that by the time the movie came around, I already knew what it was going to be. And then I watched it, I'm like, yeah, that's what they presented, and I'm not surprised anymore. And it's finally here. And the other issue is that the reason it's an honorable mention is because there's a lot of things that happen, a lot of dramatic things that happen involving characters and worlds and catastrophic events that have a huge impact on the overall story of everything that's come before and everything that will come in the future. But it's all still played very lightheartedly and never taken seriously, and I think that's to its detriment. But it's still pretty close to like at least the top 3 most entertaining and fun Marvel movies, and I think that's a surprise when you're so far in. So I really like that. And Korg, of course, played by Taika Waititi, is just hilarious, and he should get his own spin-off. He won't, but he should get short films at least. That'll be hilarious. Another honorable mention that I'd like to throw in is Split. So M. Night Shyamalan, who directed The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable and Signs and The Village, and that was started to trail off into movies like The Last Airbender and Lady in the Water that a lot of people hate, and he kind of was this golden boy when he first started and then kind of trailed off. And recently he's been kind of like working his way back up with movies like The Visit and now with Split. And Split is about I guess you call him a serial killer, played by James McAvoy, and he has 24 different split personalities. You don't necessarily see 24, but you see about 8 or 9 where James McAvoy is a woman in some personalities, a small child, and you see that change in him, and it's a really incredible performance. What I liked about it, though, is that it is a straight thriller on one stage where you have James McAvoy kidnap these girls and imprison them, and it's their kind of way of how to escape, and there's 2 kind of ditzy damsels in distress, and then there's this one girl who's really intuitive and smart and clever, and through flashbacks into her life you see how she kind of got to be that way, and the way that it plays out towards the end of the movie, which I guess is spoilers, but we talked about it in our spoiler chat, but essentially the way that it links to a previous movie of M. Night Shyamalan's, which did have the themes that are very clear in this, and it makes sense when you realize that at the end of the movie it's actually a sequel, heightens it to another level, and that the movie itself and that movie are about the flaws in you and the struggles that you go through in life are seemingly pointless, and yet all the things that happen in your life are for a reason, that the atrocities in your life or the tragedy in your life is a way to unlock your real potential and who you really are. And that's not only true of James McAvoy's character and his transformation into something new, his 25th personality, but also in the main heroine as well. And I look forward to seeing where that goes with possible future sequels. So Split, I'm going to put in there as well. Let's have a looky here. Another one I wanted to mention is Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. I know we talked about it at length, and you can see that in our previous videos, but I just also wanted to give it a name drop here, that it harkens back to those fun family adventure movies of my childhood. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Back to the Future, The Goonies, The Never-Ending Story, where it takes these everyday kids and takes them on a fantastical journey and brings together these class types that you'd never expect to be together in the same room, and kind of gets them to interact with each other and become better people for it. Again, it's only a kids movie, family fun movie about going into a board game or video game and doing video gamey things, but it's that sense of family adventure where you can take your kids, you can take the parents can take their kids, enjoy it as well, adults can enjoy it, and there's not many movies these days, even with the Marvel movies and DC movies, Transformers movies, they're all still very dark, and I don't know if you'd want kids to go and see some of them necessarily. Some of them have very hi Birdie, oh hi Birdie, have some kind of dark or violent or mean elements to them, or even just are morally unclear. And I'm glad to see like a wholesome movie that kids can go to and get a good message out of. So I wanted to throw Jumanji in there as well. Thank you. Totally agree with that as well. Now we'll get into our best ofs. So let's have a look. What are we going to go with? These aren't in any real order except for the final one. So I'll start with Baby Driver. So Baby Driver is directed by Edgar Wright, who made what I consider a perfect movie, a movie that I love immensely, one of my favorite movies of all time, Shaun of the Dead. Also Hot Fuzz and World's End and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which is amazing as well. This is his first American-made movie. I think Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was still Canadian shot, but it's about this kid called Baby who works as a driver for essentially these gangsters, and Edgar Wright has such a unique style and visual flair and sense of humor and pace to his movies, and never wastes a single frame. There's always interesting ideas there, and what he's added to the mix here is music. He uses music incredibly well, and not only in the characters, like music plays an important part to the character Baby because he's got ringing in the ear from a car accident, so he uses the music to drown out sound around him and just listens to the music, so it works for his character. It works for the narrative of the story. Glad to hear, Birdie, that Baby Driver is one of your new most fave movies. It is very awesome. That the music works into the narrative of the story, where he picks these songs, they scope out the track or the journey to a bank heist or ATM or wherever they need to go to do a robbery, and he's timed the music to the turns or the timing of where they need to go or where they need to be. So the movie and the music are in sync with each other in the car chases. And then not only that, but it is also in the fabric of the film. the opening sequence where he goes to get coffee, and it's such a simple scene where it could just be someone walking to get coffee, but it's very telling of the character, and amazing visual storytelling where he's walking along the street and he's singing along or bopping along to the music, and as the lyrics of the song occur, the lyrics appear on graffiti, they appear on signs, and it's only very subtle that you'd notice that. Maybe not the first time, maybe the second time around, but it's incredible, and it's all in one shot as well. Yeah, the music, the beats of the scene to each beat of the music. That's correct. So the best way to explain it is the Suicide Squad trailer, Bohemian Rhapsody trailer, for about 60% of the movie. And even in not just the car chases, even in scenes where there's a foot chase and everything's gone to crap and he's running away and the steps of his feet are on the ground, or gunshots are matching the music, and you wouldn't even really notice it if you're not really paying attention. That's what makes it so brilliant. John Hamm's incredible in it, Kevin Spacey, Jamie Foxx. They start out as these kind of supporting characters, and then as the story evolves and everything kind of goes awry, they really come into the story as their own. So Baby Driver is an incredible movie and definitely worth seeing. Ryan says, that sounds incredibly complicated and an amazing thing that Edgar has made it work that precisely. Yeah, and I mean, it is like, I'd say 60%, maybe 40%, but it's definitely a big part of the movie and for a lot of the movie, not just here and there. So I think that works really well. The next movie I'd like to put in is The Big Sick. So I'll need to read this one out because I get the pronunciation wrong. So The Big Sick is, let's have a look, written by Kamal Nanjiani and his wife, Emily V. Gordon. Okay, so The Big Sick is essentially a romantic comedy drama, but an honest one, and leans more on the drama side than the comedy side. It's about thank you very much. It's about a Pakistani American who migrated here with his family, and his relationship with a girl named Emily Gardner, who he meets one night. He's a comedian, and meets her one night, takes her back to his place, and they form a relationship and fall in love. And then suddenly she falls ill out of nowhere, and she goes into a coma, an induced coma. And the doctors are trying to figure out what's wrong with her, and it's touch and go whether she'll survive or not. But before she goes into the coma, they kind of have a breakup fight. So when their friend calls Kamal to come to the hospital, he's unsure whether they're together again, not together again, what's going on. And it's a really fascinating story. Kamal is probably best known as Dinesh from Silicon Valley, and it's based on his real life relationship with his wife. His name's Kamal in the movie, his wife's name's Emily, or his partner's name in the movie is Emily as well. And not only is it a true romantic story about real people and messy relationships and awkward encounters, it's a relationship about the families of the people that you fall in love with. So while she's in a coma, her family come along, played by Holly Hunter and Ray Romano, her parents, and he has had some time with her, but he's never met these people. And it's the relationship that they build over the weeks that she's in a coma, and whether or not she'll survive or not, and the relationship that he builds with them, which is awkward at first, and then becomes this loving kind of caring relationship for him as almost a son, and then whether or not that's going to remain now that she awakes again, if she does. Spoilers, she does. So the movie is directed by Michael Showalter, and Michael Walter I wasn't familiar with until I saw Wet Hot American Summer, and he originally wrote and directed the original Wet Hot American Summer, the movie, and then came back for the series and also plays a character in it. And I thought he was such an interesting, weird character, and I looked further into him, and he is the writer of the show, and he's the director here. So he's got his unique style here with a true story from Kamal, as well as the story of his family as well, and what it means to be an immigrant in a foreign country. And it can be relatable for Filipino people, or Vietnamese people, or Sudanese people, or Italian people, or Greek people who have migrated even to Australia. And the idea that you need to stay true to your culture and be your ethnicity and your nationality, and yet you're in a country where it's a very different lifestyle and very different customs, and you go to school at a young age and you're brought up around what it means to be American or Australian and our customs and our lifestyle, and you're torn between the two worlds and what your parents want for you and what you want for you, and whether you are Indian or Pakistani, or whether you're Asian, or whether you're American or Australian, or what that means to you. Like, do you make a decision? Is it betrayal against one thing to have another? And that's something really fascinating that explores as well. And I imagine, of course, it's a real thing that he's gone through, especially as a comedian, where it's such a untraditional job that he's chosen for himself. And I think a lot of humor comes out of tragedy, and tragedy comes out of humor, and this movie really reflects that. So The Big Sick is definitely a thumbs up for me. Okay, let's go with Happy Death Day. Now, Happy Death Day was a movie that I didn't get to see when it originally came out, and it was on my list of things to see, and I was like, yeah, if I see it, I see it. If I don't, I don't. And I'm glad I did actually watch it. And Ryan says The Big Sick was highly anticipated for me. I really like Kamal as a comedian and a voice. Glad it's fantastic. Yeah, I agree. Now, what was I talking about? You've thrown me now. Happy Death Day, yes. So Happy Death Day was a movie that I was like, and I'm glad I did watch it, because essentially all I knew was the plot is it's a slasher horror movie crossed with Groundhog Day. And I didn't know what the characters were, what else the premise was, but I thought, yeah, I'm in for that, I'll watch that. So I did, and it is such a simple premise. It follows this really self-absorbed college student named Tree, and she's very up herself and doesn't care about anybody else, and is kind of washed up and partying all the time, and she's in this fraternity with all these stuck-up girls, and the idea is that she wakes up in a dorm room, and she's had a crazy night out. She wakes up with a stranger that she doesn't know, and she leaves the dorm room and goes home, and over the course of the day, she ends up being killed by this murderer. He wears a funky little baby mask, which is the mascot of the university, and he kills her at the end of the day, and then she wakes up again, just like Groundhog Day, in the same room again, and repeats the day over and over again. And as the movie goes along, you find out more about her. It's her birthday, which is another thing of significance. So her father's trying to call her, and you don't know what that's about. The guy that she's with, she just assumes she slept with, and as it progresses, he finds out that he's more of a nice guy who just kind of took her home and put her to bed, and she confides in people some days and tells them her story, and they laugh it off. Some days they believe it, some days it gets to a certain point. Just like Groundhog Day, it really gives her a chance to kind of discover more about herself. There's days where she doesn't care and just walks around naked. There's days where she tries to solve who the person is trying to catch her is, and goes out on all these zany adventures. It is a horror movie, and there's a lot of there's not a lot of gore in it, but there are gory scenes where it doesn't show the implications of what happened, but you get the idea. And there's a lot of clever ways that she dies, and clever ways that she avoids how to die. But it was really surprising how fun the characters were, how true they rang, the journey that she goes on, the conventions that it uses, the multiple endings of you think it's resolved and then it's not, and then it is, and then it isn't. I really love this movie, and I thought it was great, and I think it only goes for about an hour and 44 minutes. It's an easy watch. I think you should definitely check it out. Next, I will talk about I have to say War of the Planet of the Apes is the next one for me. So Rise of the Planet of the Apes was my favorite movie of that year. One of my favorite science fiction movies of all time. It was such an incredible movie to see the journey of this baby ape into a man, essentially, all portrayed through CGI. And yes, it's portrayed by CGI, but it's also got the incredible performance of Andy Serkis behind the motion capture. And what they achieved in that movie was incredible, and that was the first movie that was a reboot, but also a prequel in a sense to Planet of the Apes. It could stand alone, but it could also be a prequel, and there are a lot of little Easter eggs in that movie that would lead up to future events. Then Dawn of the Planet of the Apes came out, which was directed by Matt Reeves, and Matt Reeves came on and again took it to another level. The performances from the motion capture, the time that it spends with the apes themselves in silence. They could sign language, which Caesar learnt in the first movie. But there's long stretches of silence there. But the movie itself was pretty bland, about control of a dam, and Jason Isaacs was in it, and Gary Oldman was in it, but they were very underused. But it was more about the conflict between ape and ape. Ape shall not kill ape is one of the themes of Planet of the Apes. And Caesar, played by Andy Serkis, and Koba, played by Toby Kebbell, were at loggerheads of he was treated badly by humans and experimented on, and Caesar's trying to set an example for his people, and they come to loggerheads there. So when War of the Planet of the Apes starts, Caesar has started a family, and he's moved on, and they kind of live in the trees amongst themselves in tranquility, and then the last of the human race, military, come in to assassinate him. Essentially, he's a problem for them. And tragedy happens for Caesar and his family, and he's sent off on a mission of revenge. And Jaisanta Gadji says, I had never seen any of the Planet of the Apes and have seen them all now this year, and it's one of my favorites. I enjoyed it, but not as much as some of the earlier ones. Oh, that's nice, Jaisanta. Have you seen the original 1968 Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes? Any of those ones? Or are you just referring to the newer ones, the latest trilogy? Interesting to find out. We'll come back to that. But yeah, this movie really closes out the trilogy of the Rise, Dawn, and now War. Again, it's a movie... okay, yeah, oh, interesting. Yes. It really plays into Caesar being this messiah figure now, and praised by his apes and feared by the humans, and yet at the same time he is just a man or an ape dealing with his inner turmoil, and he's on this mission of revenge, and is it the right thing to do, and what does that represent for his ape kind? And he has to protect the apes and get them to a safe place, but he's going off on this mission of revenge, and he has this fear inside of him of whether he will turn out to be like Koba and give in to his anchor. That's something that eats him up during the movie. And again, it's all visually told through mostly silent scenes. Caesar can talk now, but doesn't talk much. He's at loggerheads with the leader of the military, which is Woody Harrelson, and Woody Harrelson's reasons for what he does is really fascinating. And a lot of people were disappointed that it never really reached a war, the promise of the war. But I think it's more of an internal war for Caesar. And the small battles that lead to, the elimination of mankind when it gets to the Planet of the Apes movies. But it really does come full circle, and if you watch all three of them back to back, you can see that clear arc. Even though the first one was made by Rupert Wyatt, and again, in the sense of The Last Jedi, they didn't have a clear plan of where it was going to go, but in this sense, it really worked, and you can kind of see that cycle kind of come full circle. So I'm disappointed that he wasn't nominated for an Academy Award. Again, there's a lot of speculation about, how much is what the artists do, and how much is what the performance is, and what counts. But then again, you could argue that it's the costumes. Is the performance the costumes that you wear, or is it the performance that you give? But yeah, War for the Planet of the Apes and the whole recent Apes trilogy as a whole is an incredible experience. You should definitely check out. One that I've only watched recently, but I think really stuck with me, is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So this one's got a lot of Oscar buzz. It stars Frances McDormand, And I saw the trailer for it out of nowhere. I didn't even know it existed, and it was such a punchy and impactful and clever and strange and unique trailer that I was dying to see it. And essentially, it's about a mother whose daughter was attacked and murdered, and so it's been about 7 months since that's happened, and the movie starts with her putting up these billboards, 3 billboards, that essentially call out the police and say, my daughter was raped and murdered, what have you done about it? And then specifically names the sheriff in the town to say, what are you doing about it? And it has these rich, interesting characters. Frances McDormand is this ball-breaking, badass mother who takes no shit from nobody. She doesn't take shit from the police, doesn't take shit from anyone. She's going around causing trouble and doesn't care. And then at the same time, the police are kind of these country hicks who are inefficient in what they do, but going through their own struggles as well. Sam Rockwell is incredible as this dumb deputy. And Woody Harrelson is the sheriff of the town, and kind of this noble kind of guy, but still struggling with his own problems. And over the course of the movie, these people start one place, as some are like despicable, horrible people that do horrible things, and you can possibly root for them. And then towards the end of the movie, they become almost completely different people in only small acts of kindness. And you never really know where it's going to go or what's going to happen. Frances McDormand is amazing. The way that she doesn't care. John Hawkes is in it. Peter Dinklage is in it. They all give great performances. It's just a fascinating character study, and I think it has a lot of ambiguity to it as well, where people display traits because of certain reasons, and whether it's Ryan's asking, does it deserve the Oscar buzz? Yeah, I'd say it was. Frances McDormand should definitely be nominated easily, if not win. She's incredible, and I believe Sam Rockwell was nominated as well. But it's just such an interesting movie, and goes places you don't expect it to. Even seeing the trailer and thinking I know what it's about, it does move at a lot of a slower pace, but there's so many things that are set up that you don't even realize are being set up, only to pay off later in unexpected ways, that everything is important in the movie, and then when it gets to the end, you can kind of see the full picture of it. I definitely recommend seeing 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Let's have a look. Alright, I'll go through some quick honorable mentions again. I've got a few more left over that I kind of glazed over, but I just wanted to say The Shape of Water was one that I really liked. Guillermo del Toro, who I love the way whenever a movie trailer comes up and it says from the visionary director Guillermo del Toro, because he definitely is, makes these big blockbuster movies like Hellboy or Blade 2 or Pacific Rim, but then also makes these personal fantasy movies. I guess they're like fairy tales, but set against the real harsh, horrific world, and a lot of them are set against real time periods. The Devil's Backbone was one. Pan's Labyrinth was an amazing one. Crimson Peak was his most recent movie that I didn't quite really like, which was strange. But The Shape of Water, if it existed in a world where Hellboy didn't exist, I would have been blown away by the set design and the amazing character design. Essentially, the premise of the movie is there's a young lady who is a mute, and she works at a cleaner of a government facility in the 1950s, 60s. And they're housing this creature from the Black Lagoon, essentially, this merman creature. And she signs, but she can't talk, and she feels that she is an incomplete person. And throughout the movie, she forms a relationship with this creature. But there's also the subtext of, you know, it being an outcast as well, and the time that she lives in with black people in the movie are outcast as well and not treated with dignity, and gay people as well kind of have to stay closeted and are unaccepted, and all of that kind of is a subtext that comes together in the movie. The problem though is that it looks very, 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 very much like Abe Sapien from Hellboy. Even in the way it's introduced, in the things that it does, the story overall feels like a lot like a prequel of sorts. Even though it's not, it's its own standalone story. But Doug Jones plays the character as well, who also played Abe Sapien. But there's a lot of great performances in it. Michael Shannon from Boardwalk Empire is incredible. Again, it utilizes his just weirdness. He is incredible in it. But yeah, if those things didn't exist and it was his own standalone thing that I've never heard of and went into it cold, I think it would have been incredible. But because it borrows so many familiar elements from what he's done before, I don't think it's as unique as it could have been. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. The other one I wanted to mention as well was Power Rangers. I love Power Rangers growing up in the 90s. It's very kitschy and cheesy and horrible in ways, but fun and lighthearted. And when they were doing a movie, I thought, well, what's the point in doing a movie? It's just going to be the same thing. But they took a really different take and kind of made it the Breakfast Club with these really interesting characters. You've got juvenile delinquents, you've got homosexual characters, you've got autistic characters that are the Power Rangers, and that's a really interesting choice. The things that brought it together as a drama and the revelations about the characters, even though it's a lighthearted kind of, I wouldn't say family movie, maybe teen adventure action movie, are great. The Power Ranger-y stuff, not so much. I mean, it is a first movie and hopefully a franchise. They only turn into Power Rangers towards the end of the movie in one scene, and then they're fighting with their Zords, which is alright-ish. But I was really surprised by just how interesting it was. So I'm going to throw Power Rangers in there as well. Another one I'd like to throw in is Wonder Woman. I want to give that a shout out just because I think in years to come it will have the same reverence that Superman the movie does with Christopher Reeve, where it's like the pinnacle of what female superhero movies can be. It's a movie that's charming and exciting, and it presents Wonder Woman as this powerful force. She's naive in a way that is noble. She's not represented as a sex symbol. She's represented almost as this kind of muse to the world. The no man's land scene where she walks across the warfield is incredible, but it does kind of turn into superhero fare at the end, where it's just kind of explosions and fire and disappointment. But her chemistry with Chris Pine is amazing, and I'm sad to see that he won't be back in Wonder Woman 2. They had such a beautiful relationship, and the scene where she's talking to him and he can't hear her, or vice versa, she can't hear what he's saying, is so heartfelt. I really think Wonder Woman is worth a mention. But let's go to my number one. No, let's say my worst. I did say that there were some that were disappointing, but there were some that were the worst. I'll throw out a couple. So Baywatch was a massive disappointment. The fun movies have been made from TV series that kind of mock themselves. Baywatch has never been a seriously taken show. So when I heard that it was going to be made into a movie in a spoof kind of comedy way, I was thinking The Brady Bunch or 21 Jump Street or 22 Jump Street, which are amazing. But this movie was barely a movie. It was a comedy that it wasn't very funny. It was dull in a lot of moments. When there are scenes that are meant to be funny, they go on for way too long. The Rock, as charming as he is, and Zac Efron, which I like as well, especially in Bad Neighbors, he was great in a dramatic comedy, are just bland. The story doesn't go anywhere. David Hasselhoff makes a cameo in a strange way. The Rock plays Mitch Buchanan, the character David Hasselhoff plays, and then David Hasselhoff turns up as Mitch Buchanan in a dream fantasy real sequence, and it doesn't make any sense. It was just not well made. Another one was The Dark Tower. The Dark Tower was hopefully going to be my gateway into the Dark Tower universe. I was really excited for that. The gunslinger and what that means, and the series of books that there's so much rich lore to go into, and this renaissance of Stephen King with It, and the new TV series that's coming out that links into all of that. But it felt like a kids movie. I didn't know that it was meant to be a kids movie. I thought it was going to be like this serious fantasy epic. And it was just this meh movie. Matthew McConaughey, who's been incredible lately, was in it as the, mustache twirling villain. Idris Elba, who's usually great, was just kind of meh. I think it was just really poorly done and uninteresting, and I'm disappointed. It kind of turned me off The Dark Tower completely, which is sad. And everybody raves about how great a series it is, and I think it's going to take a long time before they try and reboot it, which is a shame, really. The other one I wanted to mention was Transformers: The Last Knight. After the endurance test that was Age of Extinction, every time a Transformers movie comes out, I'm like, how can it be bad? It's like Transformers. It's awesome. Just have Transformers transforming and saying noble things and beating each other up and have this good versus bad battle, and then don't focus on the people. But every time they bring in these characters that nobody gives a crap about, throw in the military. They're constantly retconning the movies. Like, nobody watches. They make the first movie, never watch it again. Make the second movie, never watch it again. The first movie introduced the idea of Sam Witwicky's great-great-grandfather Archibald Witwicky finding Megatron in the snow in the Arctic Circle, and that was the first time they discovered Transformers, and he was kept in the Hoover Dam. Then the second movie retconned that by Transformers being around at the dawn of man, and then the third movie retconned that by making the first discovery on the moon in the 60s, and then the fourth one retconned that with dinosaurs were killed out by the meteor, and that's when Transformers began, and they were the meteor. And now this one's like they were around in medieval times. I'm just like, what is going on? Why do you not pay attention at all? And the other sad thing is they got all these writers, and they created this writer's room to set up this Transformers universe, which is Bumblebee movie coming up is going to be part of. And this is the best they could come up with. It's just constantly disappointing. And there's supposed to be this long line of Witwiccan knights, and Sam Witwicky was part of that, Shia LaBeouf's character, but it's never mentioned. Like, they never mentioned that to him the other 4 times or 3 times that he's fought the Megatron to save the planet. It just doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. They just throw a whole lot of stuff together. Anthony Hopkins is in it. Cool things like Grimlock, who you'd expect to be cool, a Dinobot. He's like in the trailers, and then in the movie he's like, oh, he's there for like 2 seconds. All right, let's move on. So Transformers is a big disappointment. Another one that falls under and this will be my last that I'll mention before we get to number 1, is again a movie that I knew nothing about, but I had it on my list of things that I wanted to see. And it's Darren Aronofsky's horror movie, they say, Mother, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. I often mock the way that art house movies present themselves, where things happen. Nothing happens, I say. Like, somebody's sitting at a desk, and they're looking out the window, and they're smoking a cigar. And then all the audience stand up and applaud, and everyone's like, that's wonderful. Didn't you get it, Dylan? That's incredible. I'm like, there's just a dude sitting there looking out the window smoking a cigar. I'm like, no, the cigar represents the oppression of the Cuban people, and it's a Cuban cigar, and he's burning it like he's burning their lives down. And I'm like, really? I don't think that's a thing. Scientists just added in, don't even, Mother, exclamation mark, was the worst movie I have seen in a really long time. Don't listen to her or him. Mother is a movie that would be those kind of movies where you give someone and say, watch this, don't ask any questions, just watch it. Like a David Lynch movie where you just have no idea what's going to happen. I don't want to talk about it too much. One day maybe, but I'd recommend just going and watching it without knowing anything. If there's somebody that you hate, or someone who loves these arty-farty style films that make no sense whatsoever, as I was watching it, I remarked that I love movies where you're an hour and 10 minutes into the movie and you still don't know what's going on. And then I got to the end of the movie and still didn't know what was going on. It was incredible. And the way that it's shot physically makes you feel uncomfortable. And it's intentional, but it works really well. And you're confused, and they're shot on close-ups right on Jennifer Lawrence's face or behind her back the whole time. So you never really get a sense of everything. It's very claustrophobic. And it's incredible. Incredible, I don't want to say in a bad way, but it's incredible in a bad way. And it's not for the faint of heart. It is very graphic in some ways. But if you're over 18, 15 maybe, I don't know what it's rated, I definitely recommend, just for an experience, to watch it once without any idea of what are you going to expect. And I think that's strange that they made like a Jennifer Lawrence the main actress, and you get these audiences who are into the Hunger Games or the X-Men movies to go and see this movie, and they'd never be the same again. So that's Mother. But drumroll, final top movie that I undoubtedly can agree is my favorite movie of 2017, best movie of 2017, is Get Out, directed by Jordan Peele. So for those who don't know, and I don't know this very well, they're not really on Australian television much. I've seen some YouTube clips and things like that, but Jordan and Peele are a comedy duo that have their own comedy sketch show. And really the one Key and Peele, sorry, I think I said Jordan Peele. Key and Peele. So Key is an actor. I don't know his full name, but he's appeared in a lot of things. You'll notice him in everything. They're both African-American comedians, and he's in Pitch Perfect 2. He's in Tomorrowland. He's in literally everything he pops up in. But the other of the duo, Jordan Peele, is making his directorial debut with Get Out and also writing it. And Get Out, again, is a horror thriller movie that is, again, one of these movies where you just don't know where it's going to go and what it's about. Essentially, it's about an African-American man named Chris, who is going to meet his girlfriend Rose's family for the first time, and they're a white family. And he's nervous of what it's going to be like and what the experience is going to be like. And she hasn't told them and that he's an African-American man, and she's never dated an African-American man before. So he's concerned what it's going to be like, and that she doesn't understand what it's like to have that experience of being a colored person in America. And then the movie plays on those conventions in a unique and fascinating way that goes completely unexpected ways that you'd never even expect. It's shot in a way that is a classic horror movie. It's got this really loud, screeching violin, Bernard Herrmann, Alfred Hitchcock kind of score. It has amazing performances by everyone. Bradley Whitford's great in it. Catherine Keener is really creepy. He goes to their house and just strange things happen. People are slightly off. Everything doesn't feel right. And it's really this amazing allegory for race and all this subtle racism, whether it's intended or unintended, and the way people try and not be racist and act in a different way around other people. Is this beautiful subtext to it, but it also works as a thriller from beginning to end and goes totally unexpected places. And the beauty of it is that it's like a chess match being set up, and you don't know what you're looking for, but once the movie ends and it's checkmated, you can see everything before it. And watching it again a second time or a third time, there's so many subtle setups that you don't even know are happening. You're looking in one direction when you should be looking in the other, and then it all perfectly makes sense. And it's escalation after escalation after escalation, and it's normal people acting in clever ways in a horror movie where you would act in that way, and you would question this or you would question that, or you would turn to your friends and be like, this is going on, I think it's weird, what's your advice? Or to your girlfriend and be like, I think this is happening, what do you think about that? It is just an amazing film, and again, not to give too much away, I'd highly recommend checking it out. And it's fascinating that it has also been nominated for Best Picture and may even have an opportunity to win. Coming from a comedic director making a horror thriller, social commentary movie. It is incredible, and I highly recommend checking out Get Out as well before it wins Big Picture and becomes global. So, well, it already is global. But that is my most disappointing, worst, and best movies of 2017. Let me know what you thought. If you've got any comments that you'd like to add in the comments below, things that you loved, maybe even put your top 10 in, or your top movies, or your worst movies, or things that you thought, were worth more conversation, and we can get in there and join the conversation as well. Also, check us out on our Facebook page, check out our Patreon page. But yeah, for now, that has been the best and worst movies of 2017, and we hope to see you around for 2018. Until then, that's a wrap. Now I'm going to awkwardly press this button. Now.